you're having a good day. This is one of my Brazilian rain trees. It's going to be time to repot this guy today, so we are going to get that done. And just trying to give you a visual of all the way around here. If you got a good eye, you might be able to see there's a little bloom right there. And then from that angle there, while it's like this, I'll go ahead and I will point out that it is obviously leaning this way. It has now been 3 years since I repotted it, which actually would have been August of 2022, which would have been 2 months before the big hurricane. Somewhere in there, like even just before that came along, I decided I was kind of overworking some trees. And then even since then, I've kind of had some time where I've been trying to let the trees grow a little more before fussing with them all the time. And then a few of these trees I've kind of almost let go just to the point of like some neglect. As I go to edit my videos, I find I talk way too much. Hate hearing my own voice when I talk too much, so I'm going to try to keep this kind of short. I had been wiring this out to be a flat top before then. I think it was working pretty well. But then at some point when you do wire these rain trees, you wire them, you get the branches placed kind of where you want, and then you let them grow for a while. And when you have, like, you know, the trunk is only this big, and then when you've got branches, I mean, at some point these branches were kind of way out here. It just becomes like hard to kind of, you know, keep track of with the wind and everything else. I know people tell me all the time, like, strap your trees down. I've got way too many of them, and I'm really just not that organized, not that motivated or anything like that. So I just started kind of like clipping growing it, just trying to keep it under control, keep it from blowing around so much out there. I am going to cut it back here quite a bit. I figure we'll go ahead and take a look at this bloom here real quick. As I've been looking at it this morning, I mean, I have even been considering, got this little bit of foliage there and a little bit of foliage there. I mean, I was considering cutting it here and cutting it here. And sometimes when I consider that, I figure, well, that would be a great thing to do for taper, get a little bit of a wider trunk and all that. But then, you know, if you keep these trees and you know how they kind of act, this thing would just get all kinds of crazy shoots out of there. And of course, I'd have to go in and select them all the time and everything else, but there really is no sense in that. I'm thinking I'm going to level it off somewhere right about where my hand is. Kind of just, you know, depends on how I feel like when I go in. And I really do just intend on kind of leveling it off. It'll be below the last chop that I made. I think the last chops I made on this were maybe an inch or two above where my hand was there. So I'm going to go beyond that a little bit and let it build taper up from somewhere in there. Anyhow, let's take a look at the bloom. See if we can do this here. All right, just before my road trip this year, it had a ton of blooms. I thought about doing a little video of it then, but then I knew I had to repot it, and I didn't want it to be in recovery when I was out of town. As much as it rained, it probably would have done okay, but I didn't know that. You might be able to see here that it's got a little growth spurt going. All of these actually have quite a bit of growth spurt growing now. Why I just kind of looked at the videos and I saw that this is one of the oldest ones to be in the pot. I figured 3 years is enough. So I figure I'll go ahead and get it chopped down and repot it today. Now sometimes some of the things I say don't really come out all that well. These trees are actually usually pretty good where I can kind of show you what I'm talking about here. This kind of bent out like that. I'm going to guess that might even be a little bit of storm damage. It seems to be a little bit thinner than the other ones. Almost thought about losing it, but then all this weight would be on this side here. I would like to keep something over there, even though I am going to straighten it up some when I repot it in a minute. But I'm going to start here. And now directional pruning, that does leave the bud coming in this way, but it just leaves one bud there. I can just take care of whatever happens there when it starts growing. And then just kind of come along around that same height all the way around, and then just kind of sit back and get a look at it from a distance. And just see if that's going to work for me or not. since I probably will tie this tree in, almost could have done this after repotting, because with the angle change, the heights may change a little bit there. Alright, let's get a little bit of a better look at it here before I get my repotting set up. It does seem like there's a little more foliage over here than some of the other parts, but that is one of the skinnier branches with the exception of this one that I left. So I can kind of balance that out as I wire, and if I decide to wire, it'll kind of depend on how it back buds and how it reacts to this and everything. One of the coolest parts about the tree is the bark that'll flake off. This will probably happen with the repot anyhow. And it's cracked up there a little bit, but doesn't want to come off. One of the nice things about it, I see people in a lot of the bonsai forums that get all freaked out when they think their tree's dying when that happens, but definitely not dying. It's just part of the growth of the tree. And anyhow, it is time to get the repotting set up in here and we'll get started. Alright, and before I get going here, you may notice that there's some algae on top of this tree, and it looks like a little topsoil mixed in with the good soil I usually use, and I'll just go ahead and address that now. Some people like to mix their soil. I used to. I'm kind of completely against it now. I just take I take used soil for like cuttings or seedlings or even just some of my succulents that I have around and everything. I use all good substrate for my trees. And then some people also use like sphagnum moss for top dressing just to keep moisture in and all that. I feel like here in Florida we'd wind up with a bunch of algae buildup and everything. This one, since it had been in the pot so long and I know it was in there during Ian and everything, all the loose bonsai substrate will come out of the top. And it was exposing a bunch of the roots. I didn't really want to take the time at that particular point in time because I just repotted it in August. And so what I did was I just sprinkled a little bit of potting soil on top. In all honesty, I think for the health of the tree and for the growth, I think it worked out fine. I think now it's just kind of been in there for a while, and that's what's kind of turning it, some of it kind of like algae looking-ish and everything, if you will. But I'm going to repot it so that'll become a non-issue now. Let's see what we're going to have in here. And I kind of figured we'd wind up with a good solid ball of roots there. And that is definitely a good sign. Now, depending on what I get to when I get down to the Nabari, I have like the next size up training pot from this. But this has been working out pretty well, and since I downsized it quite a bit, I think I might just put it back in here. But again, let's just take a look and see what we got first. And sometimes it really can be amazing how just all of what was rocky substrate is basically now just turned into roots almost. But let's get this stuff off. $3 years definitely got it matted up in there. See, it's got some small surface roots up top here. Take those out. I had been repotting these about every 2 years, and generally speaking, I just kind of go through with my hands and pull the big mat of roots off, and then just kind of clean the Nabari up a little bit and repot it. I think 3 years might have been a little bit too much. Now I'll just kind of know that around 3 might be what should be done, unless maybe one's like severely overpotted or something. But those roots that came off there. Nice white roots. Still good and healthy looking. Obviously in need of a repot though. Even though I said I think that topsoil on top did help with the health of the tree at that particular point in time, I don't think it really helped with being able to work the nabari really well. As now it's just got it caked up in there a little more. And of course the roots really cling to the topsoil where that good soil just kind of fall on off. But still, I can work with it from there. Alright, I am going to go up a size. Like if you notice, I'm probably going to have to keep that pretty much as a root ball. I could go out there and kind of blast it with a hose and get a little more bare root. But something to start with there. Still pretty young. I mean, it is just a cutting from 2020, so it's only a 5-year-old cutting. But when I go to put it in here, even though the next size up just seems just a little bit bigger, you can see that it takes up pretty much that whole thing. Where this one here has a little play, and I can kind of mess with the angle a little bit better in there. And I think I'd like to, it's a little bit deeper too. And some of these roots here, I'm gonna go ahead and just get a very thin layer of good substrates on top of there. And I'm gonna go ahead and get the wires ready for this one, tie it in. Alright, so with the camera off, I got the wires ready to go in the pot here. And then as I was just kind of investigating, I did kind of realize this is super dense, and there was more roots around the edges than there were coming down. And so I'm just going to kind of rough that up a little bit, and then I may even work the nabari a little harder than I thought I would, depending on what I find when I rough this up some. I do want some more. Don't really want roots necessarily coming straight down, but I don't want them all just seeking out the edges of the pot to circle around either. Now that is a lot thinner than it was a second ago. Still has some of those showing there. Go ahead. You see what it's going to look like if I clean those up a little bit more. Thought some of those might be usable, but this is the side of the tree that was kind of showing, and so I'm going to try to get that under some substrate anyway. Alright, I think I'll let it go at that. Alright, and then with me wanting to, I want it right about that level there, and that is about that far off from where it was. It was just like this, and I want it like that, so I want to make sure I get enough substrate under it, especially on that side there, to prop it up, kind of, if you will, before I go trying to tie it in. Start these. Alright, and no matter how organized I try to be, I can never find these pliers in time. Or quickly, if you will. Of course, I'm sure I'll edit out that last 5 minutes of me looking for them. Let's see here. Try to make sure I didn't change the angle any while I was tightening it down there. Hit it with the old American chopsticks on here. All right, and it is looking pretty good here. Remember the tree was leaning back that way a bunch. And meaning like back this way some, and since I did get it straightened out and everything, I kind of had a good idea that that was going to make this branch here seem really out of place, and so left that piece there, and I'll just go ahead and do that, and it still should balance itself out eventually. I think now it looks a lot better, a lot more in place there.